Hey, look at us. We're on the road to
Oh,
100.
it's beautiful.
Another shit show on our hands tonight.
Wait, because I started it? That's rude. That is
No, because
rude.
I'll finish it.
Cinnamon, episode 97, man. We are on the road to 100. And that light at the end of the tunnel is abundantly clear at this point. It's me, your boy Seed, one of the hosts of Cinnamon. We're joined, as always, by the flavorful Douglas Davidson. And we have a wonderful guest with us tonight, joining us for the second time right here on this podcast, Mr. Mike Reyes. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I am doing well. How are you both doing? It's so wonderful to be back.
It's been more than a minute. I don't forget what the original question was.
Stop that. Stop that. You can't do off mic jokes on the mic because then they have no grasp.
Local jokes, local business. I'm not trying to get anybody else to screw with me other than you guys.
Look, Small Business
occasionally
Friday's
Christmas.
coming. You got a
That's
Small
true.
Business Saturday. Sorry, Small Business
Yeah.
Saturday's coming. We got to get it into people's heads here.
Okay, all right. I see where you're going with that. Small Business Saturday. Represent or go show some love. By the time you hear this, it will have already happened, but whatever. Hopefully you went out there and you showed some love to your small businesses. Don't let the big guys get all your dough. Speaking of big guys getting all your dough, MGM, right? We're gonna be talking about James Bond movies.
What a fucking segue.
That's not my best.
Just hold on, just for a moment. That was so. The only way that could have been better is if you'd started playing his theme song right then.
That was a sloppy segue, and I apologize to all fans of segues between subjects. We're going to talk James Bond today. This is a bit of a pivot. This was something that I just came up with. Leaving the theater watching Napoleon, and I was like, you know what? One has nothing to do with the other, but I bet Mike Reyes will want to talk about James Bond.
I
can
imagine
also talk
somehow
about
in there, from what
Napoleon.
I've heard about Napoleon, you can't tell me that Ridley Scott at some point didn't have James Bond show up, because who gives a fuck? Historians, you guys weren't there.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah,
Ridley Scott. Put Ridley Scott on every press tour ever from here on out. Put him on the next Trolls movie. I don't care. Sorry,
the
Mike.
troll game on this man has been so strong and wonderful.
Yeah,
especially with Napoleon.
Yeah, he's entered full on don't give a fuck phase. I think, like, he's like, listen, it's out there, it's done. You can see it in theaters. You can wait for the 45-hour cut on Apple. My part in this is all done, and I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say.
45 hours.
I respect old man don't give a fuck game. It's a different kind of game.
Yeah, even though that I still remember the bad instance of that where he was doing the Exodus press tour and he's like, well, I cast these big actors because Muhammad so-and-so wouldn't be a box office draw. Meanwhile, Christian Bale and Joel Edgerton playing Egyptians is. But
or is it?
To equivocate, at least I noticed in Napoleon, I don't know if the casting was this generous in Exodus. I still haven't seen Exodus, though I want to. The fact remains that at least in Napoleon, it's like, yeah, very few French accents, but at least there is like a diverse cast in there. Like you do see, you see more than just shades of white, and that's not counting the filters that they put on the camera.
Yeah, about halfway through Napoleon, I was like, are there any French people going to show up in this movie anywhere?
But then, of course, Papa Ridley's like, the French don't like themselves.
The funny thing is that a lot of the critics that I've seen that are French or of French descent have all quote tweeted that going, he's right. He's right.
Existential crisis.
Now, I haven't seen Napoleon yet. I wasn't able to go to the screening that Daryl went to. But having seen House of Gucci, that was last year, wasn't it?
2 years ago, I think.
That was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Feels like yesterday.
Gucci.
But between House of Gucci and The Last Duel, like, clearly he just does not give a fuck. And honestly, at least there's some consistency within the world. So that, for instance, with The Last Duel, all of them having different accents, none of them speaking the local tongue, you just sort of don't give a shit. It's honestly one of those things where the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, when I saw that in the theater, I didn't know that they were trying to race another Robin Hood to the theater, whatever, and they were just like, fuck it, send it out as is, we won't do ADR. I don't care. people aren't going to care about the last duel. They're not going to care about that with Napoleon. However, that doesn't mean with like Exodus, you're immune to these things. So you have to do it within a certain framework.
It's like, look, if you're going to have a diverse cast of people and just say, we're not casting a nationality, but we're still going to have other actors of other colors and nationalities mixed in there, fine. But if you're just using it as an excuse to just cast white actors, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question, because otherwise, if I don't, Daryl is going to lose his mind.
What?
I saw this conversation recently, and I think this is a great way to bring it up. Let me double check the year for this one. I can't find it, but it's a specific movie, 1973. I think it was
None of us were alive then, Douglas. You realize
Moore's first James Bond movie. Was that Live and Let Die? Am I remembering that right?
Yes.
Okay. So there was a conversation, and Reyes, you are our resident expert on all things James Bond. We say to the guy with the Casino Royale framed poster behind him on screen, and you've actually gone to the 007 events and stuff like that. And
this just came in the mail from Amazon.
Oh,
look,
for those of you that can't see, it's the James Bond Archives 007 book.
So it's not a plug, but just I've been wanting to get my hands on this, and I got some gift cards from Amazon from family members recently. So this has been on my watch list because originally it was like a $250 book.
Oh,
went down to 57, I want to say 56 recently. Wait. I put it in my cart along with the Oppenheimer script, Interstellar, and a couple Jurassic books that I've been meaning to get. And then I go into the checkout and it's like, oh, wait, it went down to like 47 with like some sort of like random discount. So it's like, okay. So then it was like, now I'm definitely getting this.
Lord, I see what you do for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to do the same thing for me.
God, it doesn't work like that with Criterions.
Oh, it doesn't work like that
with Criterion.
Oh, speaking of which, I brought a couple of Criterions today.
What'd you get?
Which ones am I getting?
No duplicates. I did not get any. Mike, for some reason, I have a asinine bad habit of accidentally buying the same ones over and over, and Doug gets all of my duplicates. No, I got Scorsese's After Hours, and
that's a good one.
I need to get it. I need to get it.
A Touch of Zen.
With that one.
I had the Touch of Zen, the Chinese joint, which is very, very well. Are you pointing to your Touch of Zen on your shelf?
I am. I haven't opened it yet.
Chris Baker. Okay,
I bought it last November.
The purpose of movies is to watch them when you buy them, sir.
Yeah, didn't we already talk about this? Sometimes you buy them and you mean well.
Yes.
As long as they're on the shelf and you don't have to depend on streaming, that's what counts.
Very true.
I mean, so Guillermo del Toro himself today came up on Twitter and was like, yeah, physical media forever, man. He's like, you own that. When you have that on your shelf, you own it. And it's not like, streaming is Fahrenheit 451 territory where you have to, the people become the books they memorize because they're being erased.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why I don't feel so bad. I've been waiting more than a year. I know I'm a nerd. I bought Dragon Ball Z Superheroes because the final fight that happens in this movie is so fucking badass. I wanted to be able to revisit it. And so I just waited for it to go on sale. And a 4K release is, of course, being dropped this month, but it's Blu-ray. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm
$13 for the Blu-ray DVD. I'm good.
Douglas, you were talking about Roger Moore, and then we got
I was, and we got to the book, and there you go. So my question is with Roger Moore with Live and Let Die. I haven't watched this one in a long time. It has a phenomenal theme, but I haven't watched it in a while. What do you guys think in terms of, obviously it's okay to enjoy a film that you see whenever you see it, whether it got released this year with Napoleon or it got released in the 1970s. But what do you think about reevaluating a film like Live and Let Die? It was made during the blaxploitation era. It's got some characters and some dialogue that doesn't necessarily age well. It came up in conversation because someone was talking about the use of making fun of the Southern man, and that they even do it in Live and Let Die, where they've got the sheriff that
J.W. Pepper.
Yeah. that Bond keeps fucking with the whole movie. So it even got to that point. But in the conversation, they were talking about, well, some stuff is clever. They're also leaning into some things that racially just aren't that great. But at the same time, the characters weren't. You didn't have insensitive names for just the sake of giving them an insensitive name.
No,
They
those
were
all went to
strong
the Bond chicks
characters.
back in
They
the
had
day.
purpose. They had meaning. They were connected to the community. But what do you guys think about stuff like that?
Bond movies have always been very of their time, not really like chasing the trend of the time, but kind of chasing the trend of the time. And at that time, when more flicks came out, that was the trend at that time. When they were coming out of, I would say, the tail endish, 73, towards the tail end of blaxploitation flicks. I've never thought it particularly insensitive because it never seemed targeted, pointed, or mean spirited. I guess is the best way of putting it. It's not like look at look at this. Let's all laugh at this guy together. Like J.W. Pepper definitely has some of that, but also he has some of his own. Like, oh, in some cases he kind of is brilliant, or he does assist Bond in the things that he does. I know some people have had issues in the past with kind of the voodoo bend to the movie. That also never bothered me because that also does have its ties to New Orleans, where part of the joint is going down. That's kind of like, hey, acknowledge the history of this grand city. That's part of the history of it. So it's never really been a thing for me that I thought was culturally insensitive or what you want to call it at the time. I thought it was of its time, and then the next movie they went on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And again, this is me speaking while being a biracial person, being a Puerto Rican, white biracial person. So not exactly the makeup to comment on the Black experience. Having said that, I have so many friends that are Black, including Mr. Black over here.
Are you pointing at the duck or are you pointing at Daryl?
I mean, no one's going to be able to find out. I was pointing at Daryl though, and I was just, I was obviously just needling a little bit, and I do hope that's not a joke where he's like, that motherfucker.
Who would invite him on the show?
Oh, anyway, I agree that it was definitely, Bond has always been something that geopolitically and in terms of filmmaking, they want to be in step with the sort of thrills that people are interested in, but also they want to reflect the world. And I think that's part of why the movies have lasted for 60 years and are going to continue to last for some time if they play their cards right. Because one of the rumors that people love to throw out is, oh, we're going to remake the older books with like more period appropriate stuff and more book appropriate stuff. And it's like, no. If you really want, if you want to touch those again, BBC was doing like audio dramas of them at one point. And strangely enough, James Bond was played by Toby Stephens, Gustav Graves from Die Another Day.
Yes.
He was doing, and then the other, this is something I need to get my hands on because I'm sorry about the sidetracking here, but I have all the books digitally. I bought them before they did the new updated text editions that are coming out. I also have most of this wonderful 2003, 2004 run that they did, where they're all art covers like this. I'm only missing two.
Which two?
Spy Who Loved Me and Octopussy and the Living Daylights.
Okay.
Wait, isn't that three?
No.
Roll with it.
Well, Octopussy and the Living Daylights was a short story collection. So if you really want to go by numbers, it's more than three.
I'm not going to roll with it. I'm going to ask these questions because if I don't know, there might be other people who don't know.
That's fair. And technically, I'm covered in terms of the text because when Quantum of Solace came out, they just did a bundle called Quantum of Solace, and they put the short stories from Octopussy and the Living Daylights together with the short stories from, I think it was For Your Eyes Only as another short story collection.
Oh, okay.
And they just put them all together in one volume. But for completion's sake, I'm trying to get them. But that leads to the other rabbit hole where there's a whole bunch of audiobook versions, and they got Hugh Quarshie, Captain Panaka from Star Wars Episode 1, Hugh Bonneville, Kenneth Branagh, David Tennant, Rosamund Pike, Tom Hiddleston, reading individual books. I think Dan Stevens reads Casino Royale, and I think Hugh Bonneville reads Live and Let Die, which, to be fair, is one of the texts that has not aged properly because someone is called a jazz slur, from what I remember. One of the lighter slurs, but it's still a slur.
Yeah.
It's the O, not the R, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a series that tries to keep the modern world in mind while also knowing what makes a Bond movie, knowing what it needs to stick to in order to truly be Bond. And that's why I totally agree whenever anyone asks Eon, are you going to have a Jane Bond? And it's like, no, because A, the character has always been a man, but B, why would you want to saddle another actor with that mantle? It's like, we need a female character that's just as strong and their own thing so they can progress forward. And that's what they tried to do with the rhythm section, because that was an Eon production.
Right. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They were branching out with that one, and I'm sad we didn't get more because I rather liked that one.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was surprising. I saw it on home release. I didn't see it in the theater at the time. I feel like that was like a 2019, maybe.
Yeah, I want to say 1920, somewhere in there. These
But
last 3 or 4 years. These last 3 or 4 years.
If not,
yeah. These last few years have been kind of a blur. And I, with No Time to Die, you had 2 wonderful sequences with female agents, and Ana de Armas's character. That is, I've wanted to rewatch No Time to Die. Crystal hasn't seen it yet, so we've tried to rewatch it and just stuff hasn't worked. But that one scene, I want to rewatch that one scene because their chemistry as actors is so good. And she's just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Murders everyone. Has me so excited for Ballerina. But then you've got Lashana Lynch, and that character, I would want to follow that character. I would want to see where that one would go.
You mean 007?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that, to me, I always liked when people would talk about James Bond is the code name. 007's the code name. That's the code name. James Bond is a character. Yeah. Adjust it, update it, tweak it, whatever, whether you're doing their own continuity like Daniel Craig got or shared continuity for the rest. James Bond is James Bond. So I agree with you, Mike. I agree that rather than doing a Jane, establish a character or make a new one within that universe. Of course, I would be worried that in order to do that, to market it, they'd make it like 007 presents this, whereas the James Bond movies tend to be 007 in da-da-da-da-da, but they're known by those names. But to market it, they'd have to go the Knives Out route, which is really frustrating.
They technically already have that covered because for years it's been Eon Productions Presents or Albert Cubby Broccoli's Eon Productions Presents. And then it's Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 in
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but we'd know that because we've watched the movies or we're within that culture. And the trick becomes is marketing it to the outside audience. And this is why I brought up Knives Out. Because Ryan Johnson was talking about that last year. He didn't want to call it a Knives Out mystery, but people were worried that if he called it Benoit Blanc or something like that, they wouldn't get it. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with people in the industry versus those outside of it. So you bring up a very good point. The problem is that folks are used to seeing James Bond and then they see the rhythm section and go, oh, it's a James Bond knockoff.
Yeah.
That's
it's like when you go to Rogue One and like they watch that opening to Rogue One, there's no crawl and it's just no Star Wars theme, Star Wars lettered Rogue One title. And then I remember that being weird, even though I love that movie by the time it gets to the end. But it just
starts with that trumpet flourish and then you're into it. And I was like, okay, I see what you did there.
Branding has always been a bitch when it comes to these sorts of things. Eon continues to resist doing spin-offs, which I'm okay with that on one hand because they don't want to water down the brand. Mm-hmm. I get that. On the other hand, we had a script for Jinx that never got made.
Wait,
No,
really?
me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would have seen that shit.
Someone put pages on Twitter a couple years back, and I wrote it up, and there was like basic details of how it was going to follow Jinx's origin story with Damian Falco. So we would have gotten Halle Berry and we would have gotten Michael Madsen back.
Ooh.
And that would have been the best thing that Die Another Day gave us.
Wait
Besides
a minute.
Gustav Graves just being ridiculously over the top.
God, I love Toby so much in that movie.
Oh yeah, the parachutes line always kills me. Look, parachutes for the both of us. Whoops, not anymore. And it's like, sir, you understand what you were brought here to do.
Yeah, he's like, let
And
me
you're
dial this
doing
up
it
to 13.
beautifully. Yes.
Mike, let me get your thoughts on this. A Twitter groundswell over the last year or so since the ending of the Craig era, and then all the speculation has begun on what's going to happen next. One of the more popular ideas out there, which I think you and I both know is not going to happen, is they want to take Bond to a 60s Cold War story. What's your thoughts on that? Is that something that you would be in for? Do you excited for, or are you more of the keep pushing forward with today's ideology in mind?
Oh, keep pushing forward. I mean, if they wanted to go more of a Marvel slash pseudo multiverse where it's like it doesn't all exist at the same time, but like if Eon wanted to branch out and do like a separate line of, okay, we're going to do period appropriate adaptations of these and like different Bonds as different actors as Bond. It's like, cool. I could see that on top of regular mainline Bond movies. But again, Eon is all its concerns are about keeping Bond pure and not diluting the brand with other product like that. I would be interested to a degree. And part of my reticence is because we almost would have gotten more of that sort of thing in the video game world. Because we had the remake of From Russia with Love with Sir Sean Connery doing the vocals, like doing the voice. That was his last time playing James Bond.
Yeah.
And from what my understanding is I've seen chatter where it was like, if that actually sold the way EA wanted it to, they were thinking about doing like maybe a more era movie, or maybe another Connery, or they were thinking of doing that sort of remake of older stories. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen what that would have looked like.
Outside of GoldenEye, which is heralded as the Bond game, are there any other Bond games out there you would recommend for people to give a check out to?
Okay. People's wallets are not going to like me because we have not had a James Bond game in a little over a decade.
Activision, what are you talking about? GoldenEye just came out a couple months ago.
Well, we're old men now, Doug.
Well, yeah, but that's just that was just a port. And that don't get me started on that, because fans were doing a fan remake that upgraded it to HD 4K. And then because of all the rights issues that stymied that game from even getting to where it is now, that put the kibosh on that, and it's now available for free for PC. But I would have loved that on console. But the whole thing was small history lesson, folks, because anything the James Bond franchise loves, it's a good rights issue. And see also Kevin McClory suing Ian Fleming after Thunderball came out, and as a result, Spectre could not be in the movies for a good couple decades.
Yeah.
Which is why at the beginning of For Your Eyes Only, a Blofeld stand-in that is not technically named Blofeld gets dropped down a smokestack.
It's still one of my favorite openings.
Oh yeah, and then you've got that. Oh man, the hot shit Bill Conti instrumental score. It's like he's done a couple of Rocky movies. It's like, let's see what he does with Bond. You don't need to do too much here, Bill. That is one of the best scores that is not John Barry.
Yep.
Because it is of its time, but it is also timeless. But I'm really trying to remember what the tangent was here. Oh yeah, so rights issue. GoldenEye 64 was made by Rare.
Yeah.
Who was working with Nintendo at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this was that was the first like big, oh no, it wasn't the first big James Bond game, but it was a big deal that they got the rights, and Rare wanted to make a sequel, but then out of nowhere the licensing fees went
Yep.
And they could not afford that. And if you really want to learn about that, I highly recommend, and I think it's still streaming for free on some platforms. I think it's called Golden Era. It's a whole documentary on the making of GoldenEye 64.
Oh.
So yeah, we haven't had a Bond game in about a decade. And as such, the games that I want to recommend are ones, because the next era after Rare couldn't make any more games, EA picked it up from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 3. Roughly thereabouts, because EA's run was, let's see, I'm looking at them right now. They did Agent Under Fire. Oh, no, going before that, they actually did straightforward adaptations of Tomorrow Never Dies and World Is Not Enough. They were going to do World Is Not Enough there was for PS1. They were going to go to PS2 with World Is Not Enough, but it's like, oh crap, we're not going to make it for a release window. And I guess they didn't want to push it like Rare did, because GoldenEye 64 came out like 2 years after GoldenEye came out.
Yeah.
And I guess they just, they were lucky it was a good game. Otherwise, it may not have sold. But so they turned what they had built for World Is Not Enough into a game called Agent Under Fire for PS2. That's a fun one. But my favorite PS2 is Everything or Nothing, because that is the unofficial 5th Pierce Brosnan movie. And I'm going to sell you a little bit more on this.
Okay.
Heidi Klum's a Bond girl.
Okay.
Well, I'm sold. They say no more.
Shannon Elizabeth is a Bond girl.
Oh, 2 tickets.
Maya is a Bond girl and does the theme for the game.
Ooh.
It was the first game that had Pierce Brosnan's likeness and voice. Richard Kiel came back as Jaws. Oh, but the final card I'm going to drop for you here, Willem Dafoe plays Max Zorin's son, who's out for revenge against 007. Or Max Zorin's student, either student or son, I don't remember which. But he is directly connected to Christopher Walken's Max Zorin.
Oh, wow.
They dropped some coin on this movie.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, they did. And Bruce Firestein, who wrote GoldenEye and has also written a couple other games, wrote the story for that. If you're the From Russia with Love game remake is great, because again, you're playing as Connery's Bond, and you've got Maria Menounos and Natasha Bedingfield as Bond girls in there.
Maria Menounos.
I know, man. I know. And EA went all out. They played all these different cards and all these different concepts. GoldenEye Rogue Agent has you playing an evil MI6 agent who turns because in the middle of first of all, you get let go from MI6 because you failed to save James Bond in a training simulator.
Yeah.
So it's like, we really don't, we're not jiving with you, man. So then you get like a golden eye that like has different upgrades you can put in it. And they get Sir Christopher Lee to be Francisco Scaramanga again.
Man, all the alternate universes of games that I didn't play.
EA, I don't know how much they are on the secondary market, but EA Games really went in on this.
Yeah.
And I'm so mad that I think around GoldenEye From Russia with Love were the last ones they did, because then Activision picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
Activision was working on a Quantum of Solace adaptation for Xbox 360 PS3. What happens? Oh, damn, we're not going to be done in time for the movie. But Quantum of Solace is coming. Okay, all right. So what they do is they build Quantum of Solace levels and they fold it in with what they had from Casino Royale.
Mm.
So basically the Casino Royale levels are like a big flashback for Bond, because he's sitting in the cave with Camille, and then they make it that he goes and flashes back to those moments and you get to play those sequences. That's why I love that game. But they also include the ending that was cut from the movie. There was supposed to be an ending where, you know how there was that government minister, Guy Haynes, that was like tied into Quantum? He was going to be taken out by Mr. White as a loose end, if I remember correctly. And that it was either Mr. White or Bond takes him out at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. And they left that in, which is, it's just like novelizations, man. They get a hand on that script, and no one touches it. No one tells them to do whatever. And then next thing you know, you have extra scenes in Godzilla versus Kong that you knew were supposed to be in the movie. And I am not lying. There is and then allegedly.
And now you have my attention. Go on. What about these scenes?
Okay, so more scenes with Damian Bashir and Isa Gonzalez. Their
Okay.
characters were trimmed.
Oh,
Scenes with
definitely.
Alexander, I think you get a flashback with Alex, or not even a flashback. You see Alexander Skarsgård and his brother on that mission where his brother dies.
Okay.
I think the whole Mothra subplot's still in there because they mention the actress who is playing the Mothra twins by name
Ooh.
as being in the movie still. And I mean, you really want to talk about someone that got done dirty. The post-credit scene taken out of King of the Monsters, and then the Mothra twins not being in Godzilla versus Kong. It's like, what are we doing here?
Well,
Getting ready for the next one.
we're always laying breadcrumbs. So Mike, who is your guy when it comes to Bond? And same for you, Douglas.
Before we answer that question, I do want to point out Golden Era, I looked it up, is available to stream for free with ads on Freevee, Canopy, Roku, Tubi, and Vudu, but is available to rent and buy through most VOD stuff. So if you wanted to find out that GoldenEye story that Mike was talking about, you can go stream.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I on the shows that I'm on as well, I love just having that, because I know I listen to something that's like, I want to watch it, and you don't tell me where it is. What the fuck?
Right there, right where I said, Mike. That's where people can find it.
And I love Tubi because their ad breaks seem to be well timed. They seem to have actual human ad breaks as opposed to like
algorithmic based.
Yeah, I love watching Pluto. I love Pluto TV, especially for all the Jeopardy reruns. But when they throw in those ads, it seems very repetitive with the ads they throw in, and it's also just not. It feels very algorithmically based, as Daryl said.
Yeah. I do enjoy Tubi. So, Mike, you go first because you're our guest. I figure you've been asked this question a million times, so it should be easy.
Yeah. Oh, I have, and I'm a Craig man because he embodies the best parts of what the actors before him did, and it feels like his incarnation was what everything was leading up to. He's got Connery's brawling. They took a lot of influence from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, so you've got Lazenby covered there. He's got some of the more humor, and definitely more in some movies than others, especially Spectre, like that New York gag with the car is a very Moore era gag.
Well, also at the beginning when he falls and lands on the couch. That whole
yes. Oh,
man. So silly.
And then you have the seriousness of Dalton, which was a very like, we want to go back to the Fleming text era. And then Brosnan was almost like a Craig 1.0 because he was doing the same thing. He was embodying, he said at the time he wanted to do Connery and Moore. And I think he played both sides of that really well.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Right on. How about you, Douglas?
For me, it's Pierce Brosnan. Because, and I think you and I have talked about this off mic before. GoldenEye was one of the first sneak previews I ever saw. I think the first one was The Rocketeer. But I went to a comic book store in my hometown, and they just had these passes for GoldenEye. I was like, what's this? Because I knew there was a movie coming out. My family watched Bond films. We weren't like big into them, but we watched them. And so I think my dad took me to it. And that film is phenomenal. And there's I liked watching Remington Steele. So I also, what was that other one? I don't think he was in it. But Scarecrow and Mrs. King? No, was that also Pierce Brosnan? Scarecrow and Mrs. King?
That was Bruce Boxleitner.
There we go. Thank you. So I like those kinds of programs, and there was something about Brosnan doing this that felt similar to what I knew at the time from the Remington Steele days, but also of Bond. And his films are they're the ones that I may not watch the most. For one reason or another, the Craig films have sort of taken over in that regard. But there's something really comforting about them. And I think it's just because of when I really started to watch the Bond films. Because I had seen them, and I would have told you that Connery was the one that I liked the most, though Moore was the funniest. But Brosnan is the one that I go, my Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Doctor Who. Everybody has that doctor that they came in with, and then most times they'll say that's theirs, but then there's also the chance that someone else sort of becomes your favorite.
Yeah.
Because I came up in the Brosnan era as well.
I think we're all men of us, a common age. So,
Oh yeah,
that's and to the point of this episode,
Happy birthday, Mike. Happy birthday, Mike. You just turned 40. Happy birthday.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome to the old man's club, man. It's shitty over here. Anyways, like I was saying.
And on the same day that GoldenEye and Casino Royale opened.
Oh boy, it's like you were meant to be this guy, sir.
I love it.
Meant to be this guy. I remember us being people of a certain age in the 90s, TBS, round about this time frame, November, December, always did James Bond marathons, which I assume is why I have a penchant for watching Bond movies in late November and early December, which is why I wanted to do this episode. That's why I came up with this idea.
And which is why it's a total crime that they're leaving Amazon in 11 days.
Oh boy,
Wait, don't they own them now?
Yeah, but you know what happens. It's not even write-offs. It's just people love to cycle their libraries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they had them all throughout the pandemic, or the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah.
On there. They have the 4K versions too, but there's no 4K discs yet. And they recycle them on and off, and it's like, look, I even mentioned it during No Time to Die when I was talking to Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. It was like, my Bond 50 set's kind of falling apart a little bit, and I'm hoping you guys put out a new one for the 4Ks.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you.
It's two cardboard like books that have like 2 discs on each page, and it's one of those things you gotta slide it in, slide it out, and the glue is falling apart on it.
Yeah.
Years of love.
But also they did, like, when they did the update for Spectre and it was the non-50th, I think they switched to like 2 plastic containers that just had them like in there. But still, you had the 60th anniversary last year. You could have done 4K discs, put the whole music of 007 concert on disc, because that was one big thing people complained about. They did not show the orchestral part. It was just the singing.
The singers, yeah.
And then the Sound of 007 documentary, apparently they were limited to an hour-and-a-half cut, and there was so much more we didn't get to see.
Man, I thought people liked money. Package this shit together and you make money. No,
they really don't. The longer we stay in this business, the more we realize they don't like money.
They don't like money.
Well,
every board needs a regular guy and in the boardroom to be like, hey, I thought you guys liked money. Here's what you do.
No, Reyes, you were trying to say something. Sorry.
Oh no, it's like you want to release all the 007 movies in theaters? That's cool. But only in the UK and Ireland. Okay.
Hate to see it.
It was a whole thing, and I saw all my like English Bond fans like, oh, this weekend's Man with the Golden Gun, or this weekend's Octopus, and it's like, oh, this weekend's me not getting to see any of them.
This weekend's fuck you.
This weekend's I'm gonna pop the discs in and do what I damn well please, but you know, I still want to organize some sort of On Her Majesty's Secret Service screening because I need to see that on a big screen.
Speaking of which, let's get into the whole reason we are here today with a 45-minute preamble.
To talk about James Bond. I feel like we've done that. We've recommended a documentary. We've gotten gaming history. This is edutainment, my sir.
Oh, this is edutainment, according to Douglas Davison. I don't know if you knew that. Let's talk about some of our favorite Bond flicks. All of them.
Next question.
Tied for 25th place.
Why are you going to make
Reyes
have to pick a favorite child? That is rude.
That's why I brought him in.
I could definitely give you top picks.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how you want to go.
Douglas, do you have a list?
I do. It's a list of 3.
It's a list of 3. I assume our guests should have first crack.
You already got Doug's already. We got the flow with Doug right now. Sure, I will cede to him.
Well, I'm just gonna get this one out of the gate because we talked about it on the show before. I've already referenced it. GoldenEye. I have to mention that one is always. It doesn't. The theme song, the cast. Poor Sean Bean doesn't die once; he dies twice. We've got Xena on a top.
Oh,
We've got. I wish I had a clicky. Here we go. Wait. Will this?
The Parker pins.
I don't know. It's a pencil. It's nowhere near as good. But like,
Boris.
it has so many wonderful little pieces that you don't think would necessarily work, but they do really well. It also ages really well. And for me, one of my favorite things, even though it's absolutely weird for it to have happened in this, I can't remember the actor's name, but this was his second time showing up in a James Bond movie. Previously, it was with Dalton.
Joe Don Baker.
And he died.
Yep, because he was General Brad Whitaker in Living Daylights.
Yeah, and he's playing a whole new character this time around.
Charles Gray all over again. Because you got Charles Gray and You Only Live Twice as, I think, Henderson. And like the man who famously fucks up Bond's order, he's like, stood, not shaken, right? And then two movies later, who is he? Ernst Stavro Blofeld 3.0.
So there's just so many good things about GoldenEye. I've talked about it enough previously.
They got so naughty with that movie, though.
Yeah, they did.
Like,
when you get Famke Janssen, you get naughty.
Oh, but also Sean Bean, because, okay, I agree. And I've heard other queer fans in the community say this. There is such subtext between Alec and Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's there. It's there. It's so close to text that it's so close that it's text. It's not subtext. Those two had a thing. And especially Alec is because all the little digs about like everything from the serious to what could be a Tracy reference. Because he's like, what about all the screams of the women you failed to save? Like, have they died down? To the whole bit about, it's just like, she tastes like strawberries. Yeah. And he was like, I wouldn't know. I would. And then cut to Xenia, just, But also just, it had such a cheek to it. And also because of Alan Cummings Boris, who I think that was my first big Alan Cumming experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of why I love the man so much. Also, just because of the fact that he's just a treasure and a gem.
Yes.
As Douglas wears a Josie and the Pussycats t-shirt.
There you go. Boom, boom.
But yeah.
Super Yaki. That's where I got it from.
Oh, Super Yaki. I love them.
Unofficial sponsors of the Cinnamon. Doug Close Super Yaki at all the appropriate times.
If only they knew. Now, here's the thing. If only they knew. I have to ask before we move on to you. Have you seen Plunkett and McLean? Speaking of Alan Cummings,
no, but that's also where the screenwriting team that came in, Purvis and Wade. That's how Eon Productions got to know Purvis and Wade, because they did that film and then they brought them in to help with Tomorrow Never Dies. Because I think Bruce Firestein still helped with Tomorrow Never Dies, starting it off. But then that's where Purvis and Wade came in. And from that point on, it was like up until now. And I'm sure they'll probably be working on something soon. Or I wonder if that's part of the new direction they're thinking about at Eon. But, you know, they've been with the series since then.
Yeah.
Daryl, I'm so sorry you had to learn that.
Yeah, man.
He's not a fan of the movie. I fucking love that movie.
After watching that movie.
Alan Cumming is amazing in that movie. Jamie, I swing every way. Anyway, so Mike, what is yours?
Number one.
I'm just gonna go by actor. Well, no, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the one I value over everything else, just because my father, he was the person that introduced me to James Bond, and we still talk about it, and he still loves that film. And that was his first Bond in the theater as a teen when he was visiting family in California. I think it was visiting family, or he was over there for a little while with my grandmother, and he saw it in the theater, and he had a crush on Diana Rigg. That kind of helped things. And then growing up with Bond, I was always imparted with the fact that George Lazenby got the short end of the stick. My father seemed to think that the reason was because his wife was ill. He didn't want to do another movie, and it was not that. It was Lazenby, in a fit of unfortunate bad advice from his manager at the time. The manager's like, Bond's over, man. Counterculture.
Yeah, counterculture. Yep.
You should be doing these movies in Hong Kong and like grow like the oof.
Doesn't he show up to like the red carpet with like the beard all shaggy and his hair all
Yes,
out?
because he had already decided he was not doing it anymore. He just showed up with the beard and the hair. And you ever want to learn more about this, there are two things three. I've only watched okay, a couple more things on your list. Icons Unleashed, James Bond was a series on Vice that just wrapped up recently, I think, or should be wrapping up soon. I think it was 6 episodes. They go into a lot of history with that, including how James Bond almost was Jane Bond in the beginning. And the big thing I want to recommend is called Becoming Bond. It is a documentary that I want to say his name is the director of Strays, Josh Greenbaum.
Okay.
I'm gonna look up his name because I apologize to him if I've screwed it up. But the director of Strays is also a pretty good documentarian, because not only did he make Becoming Bond, which is all about Lazenby's journey into it all, he Josh
You're
Greenbaum.
correct. Josh Greenbaum.
Nice worked. He also made a fantastic documentary on Hulu called Too Funny to Fail, and it was about the Dana Carvey show.
Yes. Yes.
And the fun thing about Becoming Bond is he does reenactments of like George Lazenby's anecdotes. So there's wonderful stories about how when he was going in for the casting, he had to sneak past the front desk. He picked up one of Sean Connery's unclaimed suits at the Dorchester Hotel. Because
that feels like playing with fire.
The Dorchester Hotel. Oh, he played with so much fire. But then again, the man when he was born, he had some sort of congenital defect. I forget what it was, but like doctors didn't think he was looking at a long life. And now he's had a long and healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, he picked up the suit. He got his hair cut there because the Dorchester was like one of the Bond HQs, because that's where they would do the press announcements for like the new Bond. And again, that's where Connery had his suits and had his haircuts. So he basically snuck in past the guard, past the desk, the one at the desk, and then cons his way into an audition. And through these reenactments, you see like Jane Seymour play someone who's crucial in the journey. Dana Carvey plays Johnny Carson, because there's a whole bit about Lazenby being on Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Garland's in there as Harry Saltzman.
Perfect cast for that.
Really interesting to see this story like dramatized with these actors, and then Lazenby, of course, is narrating it. And of course, then there's another bigger documentary that I think they did for the 50th called Everything or Nothing, which should be on Hulu.
Yes.
But wonderful resources there. Circling back to the fact that Lazenby, for someone that was a model, not an actor, I thought he did a fantastic job as doing one James Bond movie, even though poor guy was dubbed over for the Sir Hilary Bray part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of overdubbing in James Bond history, especially when it came to the Bond girls. And I think Gert Frobe was even overdubbed.
Yeah, Goldfinger was overdubbed, yeah.
Who would want to cast a German actor for a German villain? That's ridiculous. Anyway, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the more I watch it and the more I draw it into modern context for films, that's almost like the Endgame of its time, or like the movie after Endgame of its time, where it's like you got to this point where Sean Connery did 5 movies and he was fucking tired, and also he did not feel like he was getting paid fairly enough. So he's like, fine, I'm done with this. So now you've got to find someone new to carry on this like success, and it's like this is the first fresh train out, where it's like you don't know where it's gonna go. It was the longest Bond movie of its time. It was the closest to Fleming's text to this day, and it's also just this wonderful, like it's a wonderful example of taking a leap of faith with your franchise. And I still love the fact that they let Bond get married. You see that heartbreak at the end.
Yeah, that heartbreak.
There is like a great Bond movie right before that. I mean, the shots the dawn raid on Peace Gloria is such a beautiful thing to look at because of that sunrise and all those helicopters in the distance. And then not too long after that, you have that moment where I didn't notice it until the last time I watched it. There's this great callback where you see the girls playing
curling.
They're curling. And it's like, oh, I'm not really the sporting type. And then sure enough, that raid comes in. He's sliding on his stomach, firing a machine gun in that same place. It's like, no, he came to play. You were just playing the wrong game.
When I saw that scene for the first time, I watched the movie. He hops out of the helicopter, lands on his stomach, comes down. I was like, is this the coolest motherfucker to ever exist in anything? And the answer is no, because I met Doug Davison years later.
Oh,
and yes, that's fair. But also, just closing out my thoughts. Damn it, I had it. Telly Savalas is my favorite Blofeld. You get the menace, you get the charm, you even get the odd way that he holds his cigarette, and it's just. I know Donald Pleasance is the one that everyone is like, because of Mike Myers, Donald Pleasance is the one that's always the spoof. It's always the facial scar and then talking like this and exaggerating it. But then you have Savalas, who's just pre-Kojak, cool motherfucker just in there.
That deep baritone voice.
Yes. And so calmly just owning. And then you get that wonderful scene where I think it was Simon Raven, who was a playwright. He punched up a scene where it's Tracy and it's Blofeld and she sees the helicopters coming and she's like, okay, I got to stall for time. And she starts sort of playing along with Blofeld's game and sort of acting like she's charmed with him, and they're quoting poetry to each other. And it's just, she really was a great template for a strong female character in a franchise that always played with strong female characters, but at the same time definitely had its moments that undercut them, like smacking Sylvia Trench's ass in the beginning of From Russia with Love, or very questionable turning of Miss Pussy Galore. Which again, we can watch these films and we can still enjoy them, but at the same time, as people of a modern age, I encourage people to look at it with a modern lens. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it was made in a certain time. I understand this is problematic. I still like the movie, but I understand that this is problematic and this is why this wouldn't happen now.
Right on. Right on. Well, yeah, I didn't even bother to put that on the list because I knew Mike was going to have that one covered. So
that's the wonder of knowing people. I love when that happens, where it's like, okay, I know you're going to cover this, so I can just jump in little bits here and there, but I know where I'm going to go then.
Whereas I take some measure of delight. I don't choose some of the films that I talk about based on whether or not Daryl is thinking about it or not. Instead, it's if I come up with one and he responds with "you son of a bitch," then I know I've won. Yes. For once, I have good taste.
We celebrate those moments. We watch them sail away. Yeah,
good in a podcast like this.
I'm gonna go, man. Dude who Lazenby doesn't get enough respect. I think that is in looking back on things. I think a good number of people are gonna say that Lazenby didn't get the respect he deserved. Also, my boy Tim Dalton didn't get the respect he deserved ever. As I'm gonna go with The Living Daylights as
Fuck
my
you.
first one.
Fuck you. Fuck you some more.
I have one.
Dalton is such a. It's not just because of the fact that he only did two, but Dalton is such a hard man to peg down in that role, because Living Daylights is great, traditional Fleming Bond, very. It's like it's between Casino Royale and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's in that vein where it's just like, well, James Bond is only with two women tops in this movie, and he's
about his business.
Yes. Meanwhile, License to Kill is just, well, what if we just amp things up a little bit here? Like, I've heard some people say, what if we put James Bond in a Miami Vice episode? And I'm fine with that. I am so fine with that. Like, just the whole like vengeance-driven thing, and just that right before he flames up Sanchez, I love that part. He's like, you could have had everything. He's like, don't you want to know why? And then brings out the lighter, and it's like,
yeah,
fuck you.
That's in the unedited version. He just goes, fuck you.
The unedited version does give us Benicio del Toro going into a cocaine grinder.
Yes, yes, it does.
Wait,
I
that's
love
License to Kill, isn't it?
that's License
Yeah.
to Kill. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I thought I mentioned that earlier, but
yeah.
No,
yeah,
no, 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 no.
yeah.
No, I may have missed that part and just combined them together. A friend of mine grew up with Benicio, so yeah, he
Nice.
calls him Benny, and I was like, "What? Wait, what?
You
Wait,
can do
what?"
that. Yeah,
That's
yeah, me and Benny. Yeah, The Living Daylights,
awesome.
man. I love me some The Living Daylights. It's a John Glenn joint, which I mean, John Glenn was one of the stewards
Oh,
of this Bond era. It's the first Dalton, right? First of the two, yeah, because you get that great reveal on the Rock of Gibraltar when they're doing the bam. There it is.
something you may want to throw into your collection because they talk about how Pierce Brosnan was cast for The Living Daylights.
Mm.
And then just as they were about to announce it at a big event where pictures were taken, and a picture has been it was posted on Twitter a while back where it's Brosnan, Remington Steele era, and John Glenn standing holding a clapboard together that says The Living Daylights, shooting, I think it was supposed to be 86 at the time. Or I forget when it was supposed to shoot. But just as they were going to make like the announcement and make it official, NBC renewed Remington Steele at the last minute,
Dick
and
move.
he had to pull back.
Yes, it's the great all-time dick move in Hollywood, man.
Well, Bond has a lot of second timers because
Yeah.
Roger Moore was in the running for like the first time, and even with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Timothy Dalton was in the running for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but felt he was too young.
Yeah,
And then you had Brosnan, who was with Living Daylights and then came back with Goldeneye. And that's part of why I still kind of hold out for Henry Cavill, because of Casino Royale and him trying out for that. But if we're going with the mid 30s or time frame, it's not going to work out because he just turned 40 this year.
Richard Madden, baby. Richard Madden.
And he's getting ready to pick up the Highlander sword. So I mean, like,
and Warhammer,
he's not.
Yeah.
I am okay with the ship sailing, but I just wish they'd do more Man from Uncle.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think for everyone who cries, give us like a Cold War era Bond flick from the 60s. Just go watch Man from Uncle. Yes. And that's going to scratch that itch.
Oh, it's like, what if you wanted a Connery era movie with more style humor?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And it's just so perfect. Which, by the way, Man from Uncle, creation of Ian Fleming's.
Oh, that I did.
Ian Fleming created a television called Ian Fleming Solo. And again, I'm reporting on stuff that I've written about before, but I'm always afraid that it's like, what if I had the wrong sources? What if I'm remembering this incorrectly? So I apologize to anyone if I am fact checked here and I'm wrong. He created a show called Ian Fleming Solo, and then it might have been Harry Saltzman. It was one of the Eon producers was like, dude, no. That's, we don't want to ruin the brand here. We don't want to dilute the brand here. You have to divest from this. So Ian Fleming Solo became the Man from Uncle and stayed on NBC and turned into what it was.
Wow, right on.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Nuts.
Yeah, man. Dalton doesn't get the respect he deserves. Great villain in Hot Fuzz. And The Living Daylights is one of the most underrated Bond flicks, I think, of all time.
Fantastic in The Rocketeer.
Yes, and fantastic in The Rocketeer, which I didn't see until the first day that Disney Plus came out. I was like, all right, I'm going to finally sit down and watch this Rocketeer movie people have been talking about for my whole life. And
that was my first watch on Disney Plus as well. I grew up with it. Like, first time I saw Rocketeer, my mother sits me in front of the TV one Saturday night, and I'm like, "What? Why am I in here? What's going on?" She's like, "Just sit down, watch it." So you put the Disney Channel on, and then I think there was like an ad for they were going to run the Beatles' "Help," and I was like, "Is that what's on right now?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's on right now," because I had the 3D comic book. And something must have sparked with it. I vaguely remember it because it was a 3D comic book and it had a red cassette tape that read you the story. And once it was on Disney Channel, she sat me down and I just watched it, and that was it. From that night forward, that was it.
The love affair began. Douglas, what is your second movie, sir?
Well, I'm going to jump to my third movie because I need a second movie now. So I don't want to replace it and then lose this one.
True.
So I'm going to go with a different Bond, the more recent Bond, Daniel Craig, with Casino Royale. Again, big Pierce Brosnan fan. I really enjoy Die Another Day, and for all I know, that's going to be my third one, so I'll wait to comment on that. to see if I decide to do it.
I don't
But
think anybody else pulled that one, so I think you're good.
When I was
I
going
have
into
some-
this show, I told Leslie, watch Douglas Big Die Another Day.
But then again, that's not something to shame.
I know my co-host.
I don't need defending.
I know my co-host.
Yeah, I was about to say, most of the movies I've recommended to Daryl being like, this is great, you're gonna love it. He's like, I couldn't even finish this shit. What the fuck? But keep in mind that includes a movie like Little Shop of Horrors that he's never finished. So we're not going to be shaming me because everybody's got their thing. Everybody has their thing. So we don't shame Daryl, we don't shame me, but that's just an example of it's fine for him to pick on me because I can pick on him too. And I have no problem with liking Die Another Day. I like the soundtrack. Rosamund Pike is a fucking badass. Jinx gets introduced. You know what? Fuck you. I'm going with Die Another Day as my second one. I didn't mention it.
I know it.
Goaded me into this shit. Went with a bunch of my friends. That came out my second semester of my senior year of college. And luckily enough, I was friends with other folks that were James Bond fans. So we went as a group to see that. And around that time, I think I picked up a CD that had up to that point all the themes. And then I think I got a CD single for Madonna's. So up to that, excuse me, up actually even now, I think I've got a copy of every single song. And Die Another Day is not what I would call a great song, but it is very emblematic of that song in that period and what they were going for, in terms of honoring the ideas of the movie and the movie in its time and place. But more specifically, it's the first time I can remember where the theme was going on, what was happening behind the scenes in the story was the first time that got integrated. And I loved fucking seeing that because yes, the dancing girls are nice, but after a while, if the song isn't any good or whatever, you're just like waiting for the movie to start.
Yeah.
And I really loved that introduction. So not only do we get to watch James Bond, unfortunately, I mean, it's not like it's exciting to watch someone being tortured, but we see him being tortured. We see everything that he's going through before the trade. And so there was that integration, and then the story itself is interesting and fascinating, and the way that they worked in all of these references. That was the 20th movie, right? Like that was part of the big deal. So the introduction
40th
to
anniversary
Jinx,
too.
What was that?
It was the 20th movie for the 40th anniversary.
Exactly. So there was a whole lot that was already going into it. And unlike a recent major release from a major studio, which is filled with meta references, which is supposed to imbue one with a sense of, oh, wow, isn't this great? This was a movie that used natural moments to be self-referential without taking away from those moments in the movie. So Die Another Day has its good moments. It has its bad moments. Pierce Brosnan is quippy as all hell.
It also has
a good fucking time. Plus, because if I don't mention it, my friend Vanessa is going to get very upset with me because I don't think if I don't remember Vanessa being a big James Bond fan, but she went with us because we were all going. But Rosamund Pike dies to a dagger through the heart of war. Dagger to the heart through the art of war.
Yeah,
that's how you kill somebody. Well done. That's a good death.
And then you have Halle Berry come in and just like, I broke her heart. And it's like, yes! It's like, okay, it is not my favorite Bond movie and I have issues with it. But again, there are moments in there that are great. And then David Arnold's ripping score. You want to talk about modeling the music after the times. The shit that he does with Paul Oakenfold on the James Bond theme, which was another one of the singles. But then also that whole pre-title sequence, the hovercraft chase, is still oral candy for me. Like, it's so beautiful in my ears when I hear it because you've got the wonderful, like, the traditional Bond theme, but then you've got all the, like, the scratching and the electronics that are going on through that. And it's just... The man proved himself before he even got the gig because there's a wonderful album called Shaken and Stirred, the David Arnold project.
Yeah.
Where he takes one of my least favorite Bond songs, All Time High, turns it into something amazing. It's too soft for me. I'm not I'm not trying to disrespect anyone that's a part of it.
Hey,
but it's just not.
some people like the theme song to Quantum of Solace. I am not one of those people.
I am definitely one of them.
Oof.
And that's a great story. Oh man, Jack White went on Conan's podcast and talked about how he basically was like, I was brought in at like the last minute because unfortunately they did have Amy Winehouse on tap, but things weren't working out, and they needed someone.
What could have been?
Oh well, there was also apparently, allegedly, although it's backed by the music, a Shirley Bassey theme that was recorded. There's a song called "No Good and Goodbye." And next time you watch Quantum of Solace, when you hear dun 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 dun, that's No Good and Goodbye's melody.
Oh, okay. Right on.
But I love Another Way to Die, and I love the movie version better because the whole grunting back and forth I was not a fan of. But then, like, Jack White and Alicia Keys do work wonderfully together. And that was the only part I had a problem with. And then the movie clears it up because it stays with the escalation. And then at the end, it throws in this noise that just amps it up to the last reprise of the chorus. And it's like, okay, fine. Yes. And happy 15th, not only to Hot Fuzz, but also Quantum of Solace, which I think is one of the most underrated Bond films, especially considering it was made during a writer's strike, and that's why they had to lean on Casino Royale so hard, which started the whole serialization process. And that's also why, they eventually did bring in a writer to help sort of sand things over, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And Dominic Green is such a little shit. I love Mathieu. I'm really in that. Like that one moment where like you hear the gunshot and he's like, looks like you lost another one.
Such a big move.
Oh man. And then it's like when he gets that can of motor oil, it's like fuck around.
You can say it louder. You can curse on this podcast.
Oh, I know. I was it's just like, I mean, I would love it. Like just for shits and giggles, do it for charity or something. Have Daniel Craig go back and just film that scene again. And Matthew, I'm really, and it's just like, fuck around and find out.
I would donate to this charity. Mike, what's your second movie?
Second was going to be Casino Royale, obviously. So we've covered that ground. I should be telling you. I should be telling someone, fuck you. But that's definitely it, because something I wanted to bring up when that was mentioned. Do you remember the time you saw that opening first?
Yes.
Oh, yes. It was about, by my count, 6 days after my fiance married somebody else. And my dad was like, hey, you know what? Let's say, champ, let's go to the theater and just clear our minds and go watch some fucking Casino Royale.
I have a similar story, not Bond adjacent, because sophomore year of high school, I get sick. I have to stay home. Watch Thomas Crown Affair remake for the first time at that point. And I felt like I was cured.
Rene Russo.
You want to talk Rene Russo.
Want to play chess?
Rene Russo, a gem. Pierce Brosnan. For 1999 was a good year for Pierce Brosnan at MGM. Because that was World Is Not Enough. That was Thomas Crown Affair. That was one of those years where the perpetually bankrupt and in danger MGM could relax. Yeah. But it was also why he couldn't wear black tie in the big dance scene. Mm-hmm. Like that's something you folks probably already know by now. But yeah, if you play Bond, you can't do black tie in any other role. So he has his collar open and it's a white bow tie undone, which honestly looked better for that scene. It's like sometimes you just go with what nature gives you. I would say my alternate number 2 would probably be Tomorrow Never Dies. That was the one that really brought me in, because up until that point, I had 2 other minor brushes with Bond. One was when I was like 6, and we went to visit some of my cousins in Germany. And when we were coming home, they had Living Daylights on the flight. So of course my dad was watching that. And like I saw little snippets here and there, and it's like, okay, well, I'm a kid. I don't know what I'm doing here. And that was back in the days where you only had like you had the one movie that was running. And that was it. And it's like, okay, so Living Daylights and A Fish Called Wanda were exposed to me at an early age. And it was, and it was, those were two movies that shaped me, like Airplane and Muppet Movie. And so then the other slight experience was my dad takes me to see Toy Story for my birthday in 95. It's like, yes, cool. We were going to do this no matter what. So awesome. We run into one of my best friends and his dad. And his dad and my dad were also best friends. And he's like, hey, you want to sneak into Goldeneye? And they're like, yeah. So they sneak in. And I'm more at this point, obviously, I'm 12 at this point. 12. I can watch movies and I can take a little more stock and I have more attention. And the first scene I get exposed to is Joe Don Baker showing his ass tattoo to Pierce Brosnan.
Muffy.
Like, yeah. By the way, you do any gardening? And at that point, it's like, my friend George and I basically went into the lobby and played the PlayStation demo that they had in there, because that was the year that like the PlayStation started, and since it was still a Sony Theaters location when those still existed, they had the PlayStation demo right in the lobby. Oh! I should send you. Do you guys remember Sony Theaters?
No.
Never had one.
Oh, I have to send you. This is another one of my cinematic nerdistries. There is, I think the channel's called FT Depot on YouTube. They scan trailers, policy trailers for theater, like movie trailers, policy trailers for theaters, bumpers for them and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, it's really fun seeing things like old music videos from like maybe the 60s or 70s that were thrown into these reels, or like something from the 20s or 30s saying, yeah, cover dish night, bring this, and you could win like a whole Bakelite set. And one of the things that I found was the Sony Theaters policy trailer. And basically a policy, you guys know what a policy trailer is.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the folks at home that maybe don't know, although if you're listening to the Cine Men, I think you do. But I'm just covering bases like Douglas does with citing Golden Age the other moment. Basically, it's the no smoking, no talking. Please, the concession stand's still open. Thank you for coming here. Sony Theaters had one of the best ones because they were a theater-related theater chain, and they could pull from the Sony library. So you had clips from The Producers, Murder by Death. They had the Rudy theme playing at one point in the trailer.
Nice.
I think it was Lost in America or Modern Romance, one of the Albert Brooks movies. And they have these wonderful little clips that they throw in to like complement all the different things. And that was one of my favorite things to see at the movies. But yeah, so Sony Theaters at that time, that's where I saw the clip for Goldeneye, and it was like, oh, maybe later. I was getting a little more into Star Trek at that point because Dad and I went and saw Generations, the one, and it was like, this is what I'm like missing out on. Okay.
But Generations, that would be the movie where two different commanders of the Starship Enterprise that did not exist within their reasonable lifespans got to do an adventure together, as if someone just decided to retcon and change some rules, right, Daryl?
What? I'm not sure.
You can do anything you want in any script you make about Star Trek. Do not tell me you can't because it wasn't designed then. Sorry, Mike. This is
the Nexus.
This is something from a previous episode.
Yeah, I'm working on a Strange New World script right now, and Douglas is like, you should do this, and I'm like, well, they didn't have that technology at the time, so I can't do that. And Douglas is like, you can do anything in Star Trek. Anyways,
but yeah, video games were a huge entry point for movies for me because Star Trek, I was playing Starfleet Academy Simulator with a friend, and that was wonderful. And then yeah, obviously Goldeneye helped out with that. And then by the time I got to Tomorrow Never Dies, I taped it off of we had one of those descrambler boxes.
Yeah.
And I abused it when I was in middle school because I wanted to watch Dark City and The Spanish Prisoner and Memento and all these things that like I couldn't, or Dark City, because I couldn't see them in the theaters at that point.
But what is it about Tomorrow Never Dies that makes it so significant outside of those things? Is it Michelle Yeoh? Is it I can't think of the guy's name.
Jonathan
Pryce.
I would say Jonathan Pryce's Elliot Carver was such a touchstone for me for Bond villains because oh my god, did that man Did that man never forget to turn some corner of the scenery around, or did he ate everything with a knife and fork, and he did it so deliciously? And also, just it was cool being exposed to, like, that was my first experience with Michelle Yeoh, and she's this like fantastic character that, again, a young man seeing a strong female lead on screen and thinking, that's, why don't we have more of these, man? Why don't we have more of these?
Yeah.
And just looking back on it, I'm glad I saw that before Spy Who Loved Me, because Wei Lin is a much better version of Colonel Triple X. Like Anya, Colonel Anya. Like she's a more refined draft of that character. And like that's something that I also love noticing whenever I go back to Bond movies, is just it feels like certain concepts are earlier drafts and they get revisited and reworked later on. And it's interesting to see the echoes.
Yeah. I would say I love a gleeful villain, and Jonathan Pryce is a great. He just loves being a bad guy in Elliot Carver.
But also that opening. That is one of my all-timer pre-credit sequences, and also because of the David Arnold. That was David Arnold coming on board for the first time. And just I just can't fall into Eric Serra's electronic soundtrack for GoldenEye for the most part. The one track I wish they would include is the one that's not on there, because it's the St. Petersburg chase where they go for a moment with traditional orchestrations.
Yeah.
And you've got the wonderful sting of the music. But then when you turn on Tomorrow Never Dies, and it's just the strings sort of leading in the beginning, and like, da, 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 and you get the percussion coming in, and then finally just ba-dum, with the horns. It's just this wonderful multi-layered piece that just, again, you could tell David Arnold loved the series. You could tell that he was ready to play, and his other album was like the sort of the launching pad. And then you just go into that sequence, and through the whole thing, it's just, as things slowly escalate. I know it's the point of movie music, so sue me, but as things are escalating, he is matching step by step, because it's not that easy. Like, you could very easily just one like mistaken tempo. Like, you probably could have done the whole thing mid-tempoed and just very sparse. And other, like, you ever want to see an example of night and day for the same project, listen to Danny Elfman's Mission Impossible score, listen to Alan Silvestri's Rejected score, which was later, if I'm not mistaken, repurposed in parts for Eraser.
Oh, okay.
There is such a difference in what they do for that train sequence, and both of them are great. I love both of them, but I might slightly prefer Silvestri's, because it was just, and he also does a big friggin' ball swinging version of the Mission Impossible theme that just, as much as I love Elfman going really hard on the percussion, it's like dun 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 dun. Like, this one was more everybody's playing along on this, and it's just, it was reminiscent of what Giacchino would do with Schifrin and Variations for 3. But yeah, you have that stone cold opening, and then it leads into that film.
Well, I'm going to call an audible here.
Ooh.
Daryl, I absolutely want to hear about other movies that you love, except we've talked about 007 so much that I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from me. Mike, what is your, if you've given us 2, which, by the way, don't think that I didn't notice, Tomorrow Never Dies is also the first film, as far as I can remember, that references 007's prior marriage.
Yep.
And it's the only time since In Her Majesty's Secret Service. What's another one?
License to
Kill.
License to Kill, they reference
Della's talking to James at the wedding, and then
I think she tosses him the
the garter.
Yeah, the garter.
And then he kind of like smiles wistfully and was like a no thank you. And then Felix kind of explains to her, it's like, yeah, that happened once before. And then even before that, Roger Moore visits Tracy's gravestone in the beginning of For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
There is a whole beautiful continuity that links from Lazenby straight through the other actors, where they all at least get one moment that touches that.
So then what would be, since we keep it to 3, you've done On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you've done Tomorrow Never Dies, what would be your third? These are the films that They don't have to be the best. They don't have to be the ones you watch the most, but you're recommending these three. So what's the other third?
From Russia with Love.
Oh, yes.
I was
Yes.
debating between that and Thunderball because Thunderball has kind of overtaken From Russia with Love in my Connery rankings. Because the last time I watched for Thunderball, okay, small sidetrack story, and last one for tonight. I promise we all have things to get to and to get to. I know you're gonna have a field day editing this, and it's my ADHD rabbit holes, but
we're gonna let this whole thing go.
2005, Revenge of the Sith is coming out. Buddy of mine sends me a clip that he found that someone apparently leaked like 2 seconds of Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting with their lightsabers. The name of that file, it became a term for me. The name of that file was "Fuck You and Die." Now, the reason I say something has "fuck you and die" energy, or that's a "fuck you and die" scene, it is a scene that goes so goddamn hard, and I apologize for all of the blasphemy and what have you, but if anybody really truly is offended, I am sorry. I swear like this when I get excited. So it was this intensity of Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor just you boom, 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 boom. And like I remember watching that clip so many times because it was so exciting, but there is that palpable sort of literally it matched that phrase, "fuck you and die," and just it is so hard. Thunderball opens with a "fuck you and die" fight because when Jacques Bouvier is revealed to be the widow and they get into that fight and
that room gets fucked up.
John Barry fucking knew what to do. It's like I could just imagine him watching the movie. It's like, okay, like the strings here, and then okay. Yes, there's a funeral, very solemn, and whoa, what the fuck? Oh, boys, we are cooking tonight. And it's just, it kicks in with the ba-da-ba-da, and okay, that on its own would have been great because then you've got the driving percussions like dun 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 dun. But then I'm a sucker for a horn section. You've got the horns coming in and going wow 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 wow. It's just like all of this sonic energy, and then you've got these two dudes fighting it out. He jumps out, like finish the fight, gets into the jetpack, goes to the car, Thunderball throws right in. Like that energy is beautiful. The whole movie is beautiful. But the reason I will choose From Russia with Love at this moment, and why I believe I had that over Thunderball previously, was because it was before the formula. It was right before Goldfinger like hammers it in with the stake. And that is the formula. That is the gadgets. That is the over-the-top villain. That's the weird naming conventions with some people. That's all of like, that was what coalesced everything in, and they knew this is what we're doing. From Russia with Love plays at such a different pace, but it also has wonderful things like the camp fight or the sniper sequence. And you've got a wonderful ally in Karen Bay. But you've also got Robert Shaw's Red Grant. And Red Grant is a stone cold motherfucker. And I love how they play him. And he's part villain, part henchman because he's working for Spectre and the KGB. But he's technically the big bad of the movie. And then you've got that wonderful stretch where it's like, okay, we haven't seen him in a while. And Bond's doing all these other things. And Tatiana Romanova is there with him, and you've got it all kind of set. But then Red Grant comes back in, and then you could probably have felt the audience just collectively, the air washes out, and you're watching them on the train together and wondering, okay, where is this going? When is this going to trip up? And if he hasn't given credit to it, Quentin Tarantino should give credit to this film, because it kind of reflects Archie Hickok's mistake. Archie Hickox goes drag laser.
Yep.
When he go drag laser, Red Grant orders red wine with
red wine instead of the white wine.
Oh, white wine with beef, red wine with. Oh no, you're right. No.
Yeah, I think it was red wine with beef, white wine with fish.
Yes. And then he orders the red wine with the fish. Like he fucks up the wine order, and that was the clue. And and then also like not too many gadgets. Like I like a gadget. I like a good gadget, but not too many, not too crazy. But just they were just pursuing the Lecter. And then again, drafts, like redrafting ideas for Your Eyes Only is a twofer. It feels like a redraft of From Russia with Love in the sense that the Lecter is like the AVTAC or whatever the name of the encoder is in that. Mm-hmm. But For Your Eyes Only is also the proto Quantum of Solace. Because Melina wants to get revenge for her parents' death.
Yeah, just like Olga Kurylenko does.
And literally like reference it right at the beginning, you're referencing the heartache that he went through before, and then learns revenge isn't everything. And I value when the Bond series can go off path and do that. And that's why, like, the first night seeing Casino Royale, the moment that gun barrel hit, I was already sold to begin with, because you have those two trailers that came before, which are two of the best trailers ever cut for a modern movie. And then you had the wonderful remix of, I remember the remix of the theme for those trailers were released online because Smirnoff was doing some sort of like video contest. And it's like, download these tracks and you can use it in the video. And it's like, I'm downloading these tracks. I'm not making a video. I burned them on CDs, and that was like my alarm music for a little while in college.
Nice.
So, and then of course, You Know My Name was released before the film. First time I heard it, I was like, I don't know. That went away really quickly, because then it automatically became just the moment the black and white gun barrel, like the moment he turns, shoots, gun barrel and the red, and then that colorful title sequence with the song. If you're ever shaky on a Bond song before you see the film, wait until you see the film.
Watch it in context.
Because Writings on the Wall is another one that I was shaky on. And then when I saw it with Spectre's opening, it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, From Russia with Love, and that was atypical because you didn't have the typical Bond theme at that point. They had From Russia with Love, but the song's buried at the end of the film. You begin with James Bond is back, which it's just that wonderful ba-da-ba-da-bum, ba-da-ba-da-bum. Like the sub themes of the Bond series are just as good as the main theme.
I haven't seen From Russia with Love in a while. Does it open with Connery getting killed? Is that how it starts?
That's another thing. It's like, okay, people like the other one. Okay, what can we do in this to really throw people off? And then you've got Red Grant stalking James Bond and killing him. Yeah. And that's like, surprise, this is a training exercise, but put a pin in that. And then that opening, and then everything else. Like, it's really amazing, no matter what franchise you're a fan of, no matter what state of fandom you're in for that franchise. It's interesting to watch evolutions. And like, you could look at Star Wars, and what's really interesting to look at is the Dark Ages, where right before, like, I would say the cusp is when the special editions came out. But like those years where there were no movies, there was radio dramas, books, a toy figure line that Kenner was so stupid to not make a payment on, and then have to pay out the rear when it came to episode 1. I assume you guys do know that story.
Yeah. Kenner fucked up bad.
Oh yeah. 1,000 a year, and we can just keep making these toys. Cool. But you guys aren't making any more movies, right? I mean, what are we making toys for? Oh, Phantom Menace.
Yep.
But it's just interesting to look at a fandom like that, and it's like the stuff that came out of that dark age, like even Mark Hamill doing the voice on the Kenner toy commercials for the Power of the Force line, and then seeing things change when, you know, episode 1 hype came in and the prequels were done, and then the hype when it came back again. And same thing with Bond, where watching the changes that are made to the series to amp it up or to freshen things up, but also the different little things that they do to reflect the modern era, to the point where I was doing some sort of, I wrote a huge feature for work recently about Bond villains and henchmen. And one of the things I noticed was, I think it was Octopussy. They cast an actor because he looked like Leonid Brezhnev, and they cast him for his likeness. Brezhnev passed shortly before the film was out. And I don't remember if they cut the scenes or not, but it was like, yeah, it kind of made the movie an anachronism at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like that there's advantages and disadvantages to being on the cusp, to the point where some people thought that No Time to Die was partially delayed because of Heracles. Like they thought it was going to be like a virus plot. It was genetic engineering, but they thought it was going to be more of a virus plot, kind of like a Falcon and Winter Soldier thing where that was like a rumored change.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you roll the dice and you take your chances with a franchise like this. And you have to take chances.
Doug, you want to bring it on home, sir?
Just that couple years back, you were talking about your James Bond book. A couple years back, Crystal got for me, surprised me on one of the Amazon days with the first, I think, 23 James Bond films in a collection that Amazon had. Space for Spectre, No Space for No Time to Die. And listening to this, I'm just realizing how little I remember of the pre-Dalton days, and that I need to go back and visit them. I know the songs. I listen to those all the time. But I think it is important, particularly whether you know these movies as you do, Mike, which is extensive, and that is, you are very clearly an expert on this. This is something that you have spent a great deal of time not only exploring in your free time, but exploring in your professional time. As you said, you've interviewed the producers. So you had the opportunity to ask them questions about this stuff.
Yeah.
But whether you are into it like that, or you're just a casual fan, it's important to give these films their context, their time, and to go back and rewatch them, because especially if you enjoy them, not out of a necessity, but if you enjoy these films, make sure to go back and revisit them from time to time, because maybe you don't remember them the way that you think you do. And certainly listening to you guys talk about it, I'm like, I have no recollection of any of this shit. It's going to be like watching them for the first time.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
I mean, that's, again, that whole thing. That's why, and this is dipping toe in troubled waters with what I'm about to say, but that's why I would still want to see Song of the South. Not because I want to praise it for the documentary that it is, or for
Yeah.
I want to see, okay, you made this problematic movie. You made this friendly folklore, but you based part of your empire around it so much that Zippity Doodah was, you went to the Disney parks and you would have the Zippity Doodah tip of the day. And it's like, okay, we're not going to release this movie, but we still very much love the iconography of the song. And up until recently, it was still Splash Mountain. Yep. And like, obviously Splash Mountain, from what I remember, didn't really have the troubling connotations, but still it's like, look, there's troubling connotations here, but my wife and I rewatched Fantasia the other night, and they have the warning in front. It's like, look, again, paraphrasing, it's like, there are racially insensitive depictions here from a different era. We're not, this is, depiction is not endorsement. So, but, sometimes it is. And it's like, okay, I want to see for myself, because it's like, you don't release the movie, it becomes like the hidden boogeyman, where it's like, I'm going to import it on eBay. I'm going to go find those VHS tapes. Like, I love watching trailer reels and commercial reels on YouTube, like as background noise while I'm working. And there was one I found from the 80s where it was like every like third or fifth commercial, because it's all just the commercials. Like every third or fifth commercial in the round was Song of the South in theaters now. And it's like, boy, they were really going hard on this movie. And it's like, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, I sent something here. Go.
Recently, for one of the screenings, I can't remember if we talked about it on a previous episode, Daryl, but Park Chan-wook, for the Old Boy re-release theatrical, he was either interviewed or he was talking about it at a screening, but about the value of a trigger warning. That a trigger warning should provide an audience some sense of preparation, treat them like a participant in what they're about to see. That if you're going to say, hey, there may be something in here that'll disturb you, tell them what it is and give them a sense of it. It doesn't mean, and this is my own interpretation. but I don't perceive him to mean to spoil in the trigger warning what is to come, but to provide some sense of it. And so if you're watching something, if it's on a streaming service or if it's whatever it is, putting a trigger warning in front of it should be about, hey, there are these depictions, they don't age well. This is what they represent, and it's not da 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 da. This is what they viewed, this is what they thought. But removing it completely or editing it without having that original version, it creates a version of cinematic history that is not real. It's part of the reason why so many folks will go and watch older films, specifically from the Hays Code era, and think that life was a certain way, when in fact Babylon is more of an accurate representation of that period.
Hays Code era, some wild
fucking
shit.
horny they were.
Yeah.
So so just you mentioning that about the watching Song of the South and what you were saying, I understand what you mean within the context of we should not be erasing cinema history. And going back to what you said early in the episode, and Daryl, you were looking for sort of a way to wrap all of this together, is the fact that physical media is important because unless you break the disc, unless you lose the technology to play it, it is yours, it is there, it cannot be changed. It is why I have a DVD version of the special edition of the original Star Wars trilogy that came with an untouched DVD of the original release. That is the version that I watch. Not because I disagree with the changes, and there are some that I do, and that's his to play with, but this is what I grew up with, this is what I want my kids to see, kind of deal. Let them learn this before we add the special effects and make it bigger and whatever. There are some movies that are coming out. I just watched a film, Reyes, I'll mention it to you when we're all done. That is a first time 1970s crime drama confidence film that is getting a first time Blu-ray release. Is it a great film? It's fine. It's entertaining. But this is the first time it's ever being released on Blu-ray, which means that if there was anybody that is a huge confidence film fan, they can now get their hands on it. And so there's value in that. There is value in putting your things on physical media. There are people who want them, and to quote Daryl, who doesn't like money?
Who doesn't like money?
Who doesn't like money? So that's what all of this comes down to, and certainly we proved that
right.
What's that?
Cameron just proved that right, because the big announcement, it's like, okay, here's the James Cameron 4K collection. Have you been waiting for Aliens to be in 4K for years? You're gonna get it. Have you been waiting for Abyss and True Lies to finally be on something other than DVD? You got it.
My DVD is old and still works, and it needs an upgrade. And you're telling me I can get a 4K, a Blu-ray, and a digital code in one purchase? March can't get here fast enough.
I know, and I'm so tempted to go see Abyss in theaters because I haven't seen it in theaters.
Oh, I'm gonna go see it in theaters.
Yeah, there is a screening for press happening on the 6th, I believe. Yeah, on the 6th. And I found out about that the same day that they made the announcement about Abyss in theaters for one night, and I just started laughing. And I went, good luck getting local folks to go to that. One night only, Abyss, or I don't even remember what movie it was. No disrespect to that movie, but it's like, we're going to be able to see you. People are going to go to this one. So I got nothing for you, Rep.
Special edition version for the first time in theaters in a 4K print. I'm not a huge fan of Avatar, but when they said it was coming back in 4K 3D, I had to at least go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
To be or not to 3D. So another program Mike does. Anyway, thank you so much for coming and joining us for this. Thank you for straight up nerding out with us. So this was way more, and I mean this as positively as I can, way more than I think either of us expected. There is so much that I've learned that makes me realize how exciting life is, that you get together with some friends to talk about something that you feel comfortable with and suddenly realize I don't know shit, and how exciting it is to get to learn something new. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying that because that's exactly how I feel with other people when I'm learning things. And it's cool to be an expert, but it is also cool to sit back and learn and listen. And I thank you both for having me again.
Yes,
Thank you
we're
so much.
so glad you came in, and blessed our listeners' ears with some James Bond goodness for a good chunk of time. So I think that's a good place to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Mike, where can the people find you and your work, sir?
I am the senior movie contributor and the James Bond expert over at cinemablend.com. I am also a co-host of a podcast called Overdue Rentals with my good friend Matthew Schuckman. We basically try to cover those movies that do not get enough love and sometimes fall into the cracks of formatting, like Toys is one that I want to do because that's a goofy delight of mine that is on streaming but has not been on disc since DVD. But yeah, and then on social media, you can find me acting at Mr. Controversy 83 on most of the major platforms. Yeah.
There we go. That's it, man, for episode 97 on the big road to 100, man. We will
road to 100.
It's the road to 100.
Yes, indeed.
That can only be 100. He was never here, Trebek.
We'll see you.
That right there. I want you to, for when 100 publishes, you take that sound and that's how you end it. That's it. There can only be 100. But it has to be Mike. But it has to be Mike.
Yes.
And then we fade out to the sounds of like Queen or something.
I like it. I'm on it.
Not get copyright strikes, so I'm not going to sing any more of that song. I don't know how that works. I'm always afraid.
It's always best to just err on the side of caution, I've found. We'll be back in 2 of the weeks, man, with the episode 98 as we start lending this bird on down. Until then, you will all take it easy and have a good one out there.
Watch more movies.
It's never here.
I'm going to be real with you guys. I have no idea how to stop. There we go. Stop recording.